A quiet disappearance often speaks louder than 1,000 words. When someone steps away from friends, stops replying, or fades from social circles, it is often assumed they are unhappy or avoiding life. But in many cases, they are not running away, they are moving toward a more intentional way of living. This shift usually happens slowly. Over time, people begin noticing empty conversations, one-sided effort, and relationships that exist only out of habit. They start questioning where their time and energy are going, realizing that attention is something they can never get back. Gradually, they become more selective about what and who deserves it. Psychology shows that attention and mental energy are limited. Constant social demands, notifications, and obligations can lead to exhaustion. Intelligent people begin protecting their focus, choosing fewer but more meaningful connections. From the outside, this may look like isolation, but from the inside, it feels like clarity and freedom. They also start recognizing patterns in people and relationships: who is genuine, who is present only in convenience, and who drains more than they give. Instead of reacting with frustration, they simply step back. Silence becomes a boundary, not a weakness. It is also important to understand that silence is not loneliness. Loneliness is emptiness. But solitude is choice. In solitude, people grow, reflect, and build without distraction. Many intelligent individuals disappear socially not because they are lost, but because they are focused on becoming better. There is no dramatic exit, no announcement, just fewer conversations, fewer appearances, and more time spent on personal growth, learning, and peace. What looks like distance is often transformation. In the end, disappearing is not always about leaving people behind. Sometimes it is about finally choosing yourself. One of the first changes people notice in highly intelligent individuals is that they slowly stop chasing approval. At first, it can look like they have become distant or less interested in the people around them. Friends may wonder why they no longer join every conversation or why they seem less eager to explain themselves. The truth is often much simpler. They reach a point where they realize that trying to satisfy everyone is impossible. No matter how kind, helpful, or successful a person becomes, there will always be someone who disagrees, criticizes, or misunderstands them. This realization does not make them bitter, it makes them selective. Instead of spending their energy trying to control how others see them, they begin focusing on how they see themselves. This shift usually comes after years of experience. They remember changing their opinions just to fit into a group. They remember saying yes when they wanted to say no. They remember working hard for praise that disappeared almost as quickly as it arrived. Over time, they begin asking a different question. Instead of wondering whether people like them, they wonder whether they are living according to their own values. Psychologists describe this change through the idea of internal and external motivation. External motivation depends on rewards such as praise, attention, popularity, or approval. Internal motivation comes from personal satisfaction and the feeling that an action is meaningful on its own. Self-determination theory explains that people tend to feel more fulfilled when their choices come from within rather than from constant pressure to earn approval. Highly intelligent people often arrive at this understanding through experience. They discover that applause is temporary. Compliments fade, trends change, public opinion changes even faster. If happiness depends entirely on what other people think, then happiness becomes impossible to control. Once they understand this, they begin letting go of the endless search for validation. This does not mean they stop caring about people, it simply means they stop allowing every opinion to shape their decisions. They no longer feel the need to win every argument or prove every point. Sometimes they hear criticism and simply move on. Other times they are misunderstood and choose not to explain themselves because they know explanations are not always accepted. Not every misunderstanding deserves correction. Sometimes silence protects more peace than another conversation ever could. As this change grows stronger, they also become comfortable with having fewer conversations. They become more interested in meaningful discussions than endless small talk. If a conversation teaches them something or creates a genuine connection, they enjoy it. If it repeats the same complaints or shallow opinions, they quietly lose interest. Time becomes more valuable than appearing sociable. They begin choosing quality over quantity in almost every part of life. Being misunderstood also becomes less frightening. Earlier in life, many intelligent people spend years trying to make everyone understand their intentions. Eventually, they discover that complete understanding is impossible because every person interprets life differently. Once they accept this, they stop carrying the heavy responsibility of managing other people's opinions. They allow their actions to speak more loudly than endless explanations. The less approval they need, the less visible they often become. They stop posting every achievement. They stop seeking attention for ordinary successes. Instead, they continue growing without needing an audience. Their confidence becomes quieter because it no longer depends on constant recognition. As they observe the people around them with less emotional pressure, they begin noticing patterns that many others overlook. They notice that certain friends only call when they need help. They notice that promises are repeated but rarely kept. They recognize emotional games hidden beneath polite words. At first, they may ignore these signs, but eventually the evidence becomes too consistent to dismiss. Fake friendships become easier to recognize. Some relationships survive only because one person keeps making all the effort. One person always sends the first message. One person always sacrifices time and energy while receiving very little in return. When they step back, they discover that the silence continues. This reveals that the friendship depended more on convenience than genuine care. One-sided relationships teach another important lesson. Caring about someone is healthy. Carrying every relationship alone is exhausting. Healthy relationships require mutual effort. Instead of forcing balance, they often choose a quieter solution. They simply stop chasing people who have already shown their priorities through consistent actions. Manipulation also becomes easier to recognize. It can hide behind guilt, emotional obligation, or repeated excuses. Some people learn how to make others feel responsible for their happiness. Intelligent people begin focusing less on words and more on behavior over time. They stop asking what people promise and begin asking what people consistently do. Emotional games lose their power once they become predictable. Instead of reacting emotionally, intelligent people become observers. They allow behavior to reveal character. This protects them from unnecessary conflict. Broken promises also leave a lasting impression. A single mistake can be forgiven. A repeated pattern becomes information. If someone continually says one thing and does another, the contradiction eventually speaks louder than any explanation. One of the most surprising parts of this transformation is that they rarely confront every problem they discover. Instead of fighting every battle, they quietly leave situations that no longer align with their values. To outsiders, this departure seems sudden. In reality, the decision has usually been developing for a long time. Social intelligence plays an important role here. It involves recognizing social dynamics, hidden motives, and repeated interactions. This explains why experienced individuals often make decisions more quickly. They are recognizing familiar patterns. After seeing enough repeated behaviors, their priorities begin to change. They stop measuring success by the number of people around them. Instead, they ask whether those relationships contribute to a meaningful life. Peace becomes more valuable than popularity. Popularity feels rewarding because it creates a sense of belonging, but intelligent people recognize that too much social activity can reduce reflection and clarity. Endless comparison makes genuine confidence harder to maintain. As they become more selective, drama loses its attraction. They avoid gossip and stop competing for attention. Solitude stops feeling empty and starts feeling productive. Research shows that quiet reflection supports creativity and better decision-making. Intelligent people often discover this naturally. Their best ideas often come during moments of silence. This is why they appear calmer. They react less impulsively because they give themselves time to think. They choose environments that reduce unnecessary stress. They begin protecting their mental energy. Attention is limited, and every unnecessary distraction drains focus. Psychologists describe this through cognitive load and mental fatigue. The brain performs best when it is not overwhelmed. Decision fatigue is another factor. Every choice requires mental effort, so they reduce unnecessary decisions whenever possible. Information overload also becomes a concern. They begin filtering what enters their minds, understanding that more information does not always mean more wisdom. Digital burnout leads them to create boundaries. They spend more time offline and choose intentional rest instead of constant stimulation. Healthy boundaries become easier to maintain. They understand that saying no often means saying yes to something more important. As they continue protecting their mental energy, they naturally become harder to reach. Their lives begin revolving around purpose rather than constant activity. And this leads directly into another stage of their quiet transformation. They begin realizing that meaningful success rarely grows in the middle of constant distraction. It grows during periods when almost nobody nobody is watching. As intelligent people continue changing the way they see the world, they often arrive at a realization that is both disappointing and freeing. They begin to understand that not every relationship is built on genuine care. Some connections exist because they are useful. Some people stay close while receiving attention, emotional support, practical help, or social advantages. The moment those benefits disappear, the relationship begins to fade. This discovery rarely happens because of one dramatic event. It develops slowly through repeated experiences. They notice that certain people only reach out when they need advice, a favor, or someone to listen to their problems. When the intelligent person becomes busy or starts focusing on personal goals, those same people become strangely quiet. The messages stop, the invitations disappear. The enthusiasm fades. At first, this can feel confusing. Later, it becomes one of the clearest lessons about human nature. Convenience friendships are far more common than most people realize. These relationships often grow naturally because two people share the same workplace, school, neighborhood, or daily routine. While those circumstances continue, the friendship appears strong. There are regular conversations, shared activities, and frequent communication. But when life changes and the convenience disappears, the relationship often disappears with it. This does not always mean either person is dishonest. Sometimes the friendship simply depended on the situation more than either person understood. Intelligent people eventually learn to separate convenience from commitment. They stop measuring the strength of a relationship by how often someone is present and begin measuring it by who remains present when staying connected requires genuine effort. They also begin noticing status-based relationships. Some individuals are naturally attracted to people who can improve their own image, increase their influence, or provide opportunities. As long as someone appears successful, confident, or valuable, they receive attention. If their circumstances change or they stop offering visible benefits, the attention quickly moves elsewhere. Intelligent people who become more private often experience this shift firsthand. Once they stop seeking recognition or sharing every achievement, they discover who was interested in them as a person and who was only interested in what they represented. Another pattern becomes impossible to ignore. Some relationships are built on emotional dependence instead of mutual support. One person constantly needs reassurance, encouragement, or problem solving, while offering very little in return. Intelligent people are often good listeners, thoughtful advisors, and patient supporters. Because of these qualities, they can unintentionally attract people who expect endless emotional availability. At first, helping feels meaningful. Over time, however, they realize that some people are not looking for solutions. They are looking for someone to carry responsibilities that belong to them. Eventually, the intelligent person understands that compassion does not require sacrificing personal peace forever. This realization becomes even clearer when they stop giving as much as they once did. They become busy with work, family, learning, or personal growth. They are no longer available every hour of the day. They stop solving every crisis that someone else creates. Instead of rushing to rescue everyone, they allow people to take responsibility for their own lives. That is often the moment hidden truths appear. Some people quietly disappear because the relationship no longer provides what they wanted. There is no argument, no dramatic ending. Just increasing silence. Although this can feel painful at first, it also brings clarity. The relationship was never as balanced as it seemed. Psychology offers an interesting explanation through social exchange theory. This theory suggests that people naturally evaluate relationships by comparing the rewards and costs they experience. Healthy relationships are not business transactions, but they do involve a sense of balance. Both people contribute in different ways. Both feel valued. Both invest time, care, and respect. Problems begin when one person gives almost everything while the other mainly receives. Intelligent people eventually recognize this imbalance. They stop assuming that endless generosity will create stronger relationships. Instead, they understand that mutual respect grows through healthy reciprocity rather than constant self-sacrifice. Reciprocity is one of the strongest foundations of lasting relationships. It does not mean every favor must be immediately returned or that kindness should be calculated. It simply means both people naturally want to contribute to each other's well-being. When only one side continues investing, exhaustion replaces connection. Intelligent people eventually stop forcing balance. They simply observe whether balance exists on its own. If it does not, they quietly adjust their level of investment instead of endlessly trying to fix what another person refuses to repair. Healthy boundaries become one of their greatest strengths. Earlier in life, they may have believed that saying yes made them kind and saying no made them selfish. Experience teaches a different lesson. Without boundaries, kindness slowly turns into exhaustion. Without limits, generosity becomes expectation. They discover that protecting personal time and emotional energy is not an act of rejection. It is an act of self-respect. The people who truly care usually understand these boundaries. Those who only valued constant access often become frustrated because the relationship no longer revolves around their needs. This realization changes almost everything. Instead of trying to keep every relationship alive, intelligent people begin allowing relationships to reveal their true strength naturally. They stop forcing conversations. They stop constantly checking whether everyone is happy with them. They stop carrying responsibilities that belong to others. Rather than chasing people, they quietly step back and allow actions to speak. This creates a completely different way of understanding human connection. One of the most powerful tools they discover is silence. Most people think silence creates distance, but intelligent people often discover that distance reveals what closeness can hide. When someone is always available, it becomes difficult to know who truly values them. Constant effort can disguise one-sided relationships because there is never an opportunity for the other person to contribute. By stepping back, intelligent people create space for others to show what the relationship means to them. One of the first changes is that they stop initiating every conversation. Earlier, they may have always been the first to send messages, arrange meetings, or check on friends. Without realizing it, they had become responsible for keeping many relationships active. Once they stop doing this, something surprising happens. Some people immediately reach out. Others never do. This simple experiment often reveals more than years of conversation ever could. They begin observing who makes the effort without being reminded. Genuine relationships usually survive periods of silence because both people value the connection. There is no scorekeeping, no competition over who contacted whom last. Both simply enjoy staying connected. Intelligent people start appreciating these relationships more deeply because they are built on shared commitment rather than routine. Respect for boundaries becomes another important sign. Some people react negatively when intelligent individuals become less available. They interpret boundaries as rejection. They demand explanations for every delayed response or declined invitation. Others respond differently. They understand that everyone has responsibilities, goals, and personal needs. They respect space without taking it personally. Intelligent people notice this difference immediately because it reflects emotional maturity rather than emotional control. Psychologists often connect these behaviors with reciprocity, attachment patterns, and social investment. Secure relationships are generally able to tolerate periods of distance without falling apart. They are built on trust rather than constant reassurance. Relationships based mainly on anxiety or control often struggle when immediate access disappears. Intelligent people may not use these psychological terms in daily life, but they observe the patterns. They notice who becomes supportive, who becomes demanding, and who quietly disappears. Over time, silence becomes less frightening and more informative. Instead of wondering why someone has become distant, they begin paying attention to consistent actions. A single conversation matters less than repeated effort. A single promise matters less than dependable behavior. This approach protects them from making quick judgments while helping them recognize genuine commitment. As they continue living this way, their circle often becomes smaller. To outsiders, this looks like loss. To them, it feels like clarity. The remaining relationships are often calmer, healthier, and built on mutual respect. There is less pressure to perform, less need to impress, and fewer emotional games. Every connection carries greater meaning because it has survived honesty, distance, and changing priorities. Silence does not push everyone away. It simply reveals who was already leaving. The people who genuinely care rarely disappear because attention becomes less frequent. They adapt, remain supportive, and continue investing in the relationship. Those who only valued convenience often fade without explanation. Instead of feeling disappointed by this outcome, intelligent people begin viewing it as valuable information. Every quiet goodbye creates more space for authentic relationships to grow. And this leads to perhaps the biggest misunderstanding of all. Many people see someone becoming quieter and immediately assume that they have given up. They believe withdrawing from constant social activity must mean loneliness, failure, or defeat. Intelligent people often know the opposite is true. Their quieter life is usually the result of greater clarity rather than greater fear. They are not running away from the world. They are becoming more intentional about the part of the world they choose to participate in. They begin choosing quality over quantity in nearly every area of life. Instead of collecting hundreds of casual acquaintances, they invest deeply in a handful of trustworthy relationships. Instead of chasing every opportunity, they focus on the few that truly align with their values. Instead of trying to impress everyone, they work on becoming someone they personally respect. This change is rarely dramatic. It happens through hundreds of small decisions repeated over months and years. Living intentionally becomes more important than living visibly. They no longer measure progress by how many people notice them. They measure it by whether their daily actions move them closer to the life they genuinely want. This mindset reduces comparison because success is no longer defined by public attention. It becomes personal. Emotional maturity also grows through this process. They become less reactive because they no longer feel responsible for controlling every opinion or solving every conflict. They accept that disagreement is part of life. They stop expecting everyone to understand every decision they make. Instead of seeking universal approval, they focus on consistency between their values and their actions. Confidence gradually changes as well. Earlier, confidence may have depended on compliments, recognition, or external achievements. Over time, it becomes quieter. They trust themselves because they have repeatedly acted according to their principles, even when nobody was watching. This kind of confidence does not need constant applause. It remains steady because it is built from experience rather than attention. Quiet success often follows. While others spend energy proving they are successful, intelligent people quietly develop skills, strengthen relationships that matter, improve their health, expand their knowledge, and build meaningful work. Much of this progress happens out of public view. When others finally notice the results, they often describe them as sudden. They never saw the years of quiet effort that made those achievements possible. Perhaps the greatest change is the development of a stronger identity. They stop defining themselves by popularity, social approval, or constant activity. Their sense of self becomes more stable because it is based on personal values instead of changing opinions. They become comfortable spending time alone without feeling incomplete. They enjoy meaningful relationships without depending on them for self-worth. They contribute to others without losing themselves in the process. The smartest people are not always the loudest voices in the room. Quite often, they are the ones who speak only when they have something meaningful to say, who choose relationships that bring peace instead of pressure, and who quietly continue building a life that no longer depends on being constantly seen. As we've seen throughout this video, disappearing isn't always a sign that someone has given up. More often, it's a sign that they've finally become honest with themselves. They stop wasting energy on people who only notice them when they are useful. They stop chasing approval that never truly lasts. They stop confusing constant attention with real connection. Instead, they choose a quieter path, one built on purpose, peace, and self-respect. Intelligent people don't disappear because they hate the world. They disappear because they finally understand that their time is limited, their attention is valuable, and their energy deserves to be invested where it truly matters. They learn that not every relationship is meant to last forever, not every opinion deserves a response, and not every battle is worth fighting. Sometimes the strongest decision is simply to step away without anger, without revenge, and without needing anyone else's permission. The people who genuinely belong in your life will never require you to sacrifice your peace just to keep them close. They won't expect you to be available every second of the day. They'll respect your boundaries, celebrate your growth, and understand that silence doesn't always mean distance. Sometimes it simply means you're becoming the person you were always meant to be. So the next time someone quietly disappears, don't be too quick to assume they're lost. They may have finally found what so many people spend their entire lives searching for: clarity, purpose, and the courage to live on their own terms. Because sometimes the greatest sign of intelligence isn't having the perfect words or the loudest voice. It's knowing when silence says everything that needs to be said. If this video gave you a new perspective, don't let it end here. Subscribe to the channel for more thought-provoking videos on psychology, human behavior, and the hidden patterns that shape our lives. Give this video a like if it resonated with you, and share it with someone who chooses peace over noise. They may need this message more than you realize. Finally, tell us in the comments, have you ever stepped away from people to rediscover yourself, and what did that silence teach you? We read every comment, and your experience could inspire someone else to begin their own journey. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.